Here it is, Chapter 8, Section 3, the first political parties, from Washington to Adams. So let's take a look at the beginning of political parties. If we remember from earlier in this chapter, George Washington explained what he felt were the dangers of political parties, that the political parties would split and separate the United States into two factions or groups. So it all began with the criticism of President Washington. Supporters of Jefferson attacked Washington and Hamilton in their ideas and their legislation and executive decisions. Federalists, name this should be familiar from our study of the Constitution, wanted a strong central government. Democratic Republicans wanted to limit the power of government. These were supporters of Jefferson. The next slide coming up, we've already had it, but it's just for review. We have a group, the two different political parties, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. So you see what the Federalists, who their leaders were, what they thought should be, the way things should be, strong government versus weak government, farming versus manufacturing, and whatnot. So if you don't already have this in your notes, make sure you add it. The election of 1796. This is the second president, or more or less the first presidential election since George Washington won unanimously. This would be the second one. This is the first time that candidates ran for office as members of a party. You have Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, John Adams versus Charles Pinckney. Adams wins with 71 electoral votes. Jefferson is second with 68. And he becomes the president, or vice president, under the rules of the Constitution, where the runner-up became vice president. An interesting idea back then. I think it would be more interesting to have that now, where we have such a divide between the Democrats and Republicans, our two major parties. Might be something interesting to talk about. Next, we have some pictures of Adams and Jefferson, two very different politicians that were allies during the time of the American Revolution, during the formation of the government under the Declaration of Independence and Articles of Confederation and Constitution. Both of these men were on the same side for many issues, but this wasn't the case during Adams' presidency and then Jefferson's presidency that will come after. So, President Adams and his issues. First, we had the XYZ affair. French Minister Talleyrand sent agents that demanded a bribe from the Americans. The Americans said no, and this led to an undeclared war with France, which is going to lead to the United States preparing for war. Now, France is in the middle of a revolution that started in 1789, so France really should not be fighting anyone else, because history now will tell us that Napoleon comes to power and starts taking over most of Europe. The Alien and Sedition Acts are created to combat the aliens from Europe. These would be people coming illegally or legally. At this time, there was no real legal immigration. Just anyone who was not a American would be considered an alien. And the Alien and Sedition Acts were created to stop what could have threatened the United States. Now, many people felt that these acts were very unconstitutional, that these people haven't done anything wrong yet. How can we just give the government the power to either imprison them, take away their liberties? If we're saying America is the land of the free and the home of the brave, how come these Alien and Sedition Acts could be put into practice, especially by a president like John Adams, who was very in favor of due process of the law? Now, this last slide is a little bit of a comic strip that I found online that I thought would be kind of interesting. It kind of shows this time period that we're talking about. So take a few minutes. So you might have to pause it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I would suggest reading it. It's pretty good. Little and just take a look at what it says. In this chapter that so make sure you do your interactive notebook. You're associated with this. Make sure you read and are reading this chapter, and you're ready to work in class on all your assignments. And remember, you might have to pause it to read it. So have a good evening and do your work.